Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast, Warehouse Process Optimization Through Voice. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. My name is John Schriefer. I'm with Lucas Systems, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. Here with me to do the bulk of the presentation are Joe Perkins of Pate Dawson Company and Dan Keller of Lucas Systems. Before I turn the show over to Joe and Dan, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. The presentation itself is probably going to take about 40 minutes, including 2 short video clips of workers at Pate Dawson working with the Jennifer VoicePlus system from Lucas. At the end of the presentation, we're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to answer your questions. To ask a question, you can type it in the box at the bottom of your screen and just click Submit. Like I said, we're going to hold them to the end, but you can submit those questions at any time during the presentation. And of course, if we don't answer your questions during the presentation, we'll get back to you after the presentation is over. We are also going to be making a replay of the presentation available in a few days for on-demand viewing on the Lucas Systems website, which is at www.lucasware.com. We will also be posting longer versions of the user videos included in this webcast on the web. The Lucas Systems site also includes videos of other companies using voice today in a variety of industries. So if you're looking for videos of voice applications in action, lucasware.com is a pretty good place to look. Now, before I introduce our speakers, here's a look at the agenda and what we're going to be presenting today. First off, the goal of the presentation is to give you an understanding of the ways voice can be used to improve distribution center efficiency and accuracy using the specific example of Pate Dawson Company. As you'll see in the presentation, Pate Dawson is using the Jennifer VoicePlus system from Lucas for both voice picking and truck loading. Before we get to the case study portion of the event, Dan Keller is going to give a quick overview of how voice solutions work, kind of a 2-minute Voice 101. Among other things, Dan is going to touch on the ways that operational processes can be redesigned around voice technology to deliver really dramatic gains in efficiency. After Dan sets the stage, he's going to turn it over to Joe Perkins of Pate Dawson, and Joe is going to explain how his company realized some extraordinary improvements with Jennifer. Joe will provide some good specific examples of how subtle process changes can lead to some serious operational improvements. Joe is also going to talk about some of the management advantages of voice at Pate Dawson. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. First, Dan Keller has been in the voice industry for, is it 18 years now, Dan?
I think so. I've lost track.
And in that time, he's worked with scores of customers, hundreds of DCs, and across a number of different industries. In addition to working directly with companies and helping them implement voice, Dan is a frequent speaker at warehouse and logistics industry events, including Work, IFTA, and a number of others. In fact, Dan is going to be presenting this year at the Work Annual Conference, if any of you are planning to attend that. Joe Perkins is going to do the bulk of the presentation about Pate Dawson's implementation of voice. Joe has been with Pate Dawson for 7 years, including most recently as facility manager at their Goldsboro distribution center. Joe has been intimately involved in rolling out the Jennifer system and working with it on a day-to-day basis. Joe has also presented at a number of industry events, including the IFTA annual conference. Now with that, let me turn it over to Dan Keller. Dan, take it away.
Great. Thank you, John. A little bit about Lucas for those of you who may not be familiar with us yet. We have been providing voice-based solutions since our inception 13 years ago. Our company was formed specifically with the objective of delivering these type of solutions to the marketplace on open platform or types of environments where we saw the market moving away from proprietary type devices and software into an open platform. We today have delivered more of these types of solutions than any other voice provider in the market. Also, we are mostly made up of a lot of process engineering type people. So we take an approach to our projects that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but is more than just voice enabling an application. It's more to help our customers to provide better service levels and improve their general operations. We were the first company to implement these types of solutions on open platform standard RF terminals from companies like Motorola, Intermec, and LXE, and we continue to deliver our solutions in that environment, utilizing all the technology in the terminal, not just voice. For the last few years, we have been the fastest growing provider of these type of solutions, with over 300 DCs running our solution and tens of thousands of users using Jennifer every day to deliver these types of service improvements to their customers. Jennifer is used by many companies in various industries, some of which are household names like Kraft and Office Max, and many of those also are gigantic companies like Owens & Minor and Cardinal Health and the healthcare. So there are a number of different sectors that are using Jennifer. The healthcare, the food companies like Pate Dawson, C&S Wholesale Grocers, also retail companies like Do It Best Hardware, Office Max, and so again, you wouldn't be the first one. There are got a lot of experience in a lot of different types of companies, and utilizing the Jennifer VoicePlus solution. Next slide.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Let's talk a little bit about how voice actually works in a very simple environment. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking the instructions for a worker, which normally are delivered to them to do their job. Picture again, we're talking about picking, an order picker in your warehouse, who's right now being driven in his work by either a piece of paper, pick sheets, a set of labels, which may have to be applied to the cases, or an RF terminal if you're already using an RF device with a screen. What Jennifer does is takes those instructions in a very simplistic manner and converts them into a voice-directed environment, so that basically the instructions and all of the things that user has to do can be conveyed to him through a headset that he wears plugged into a RF-enabled device sitting on the user's belt. So essentially, Jennifer will get that information from the host computer, whether it's a warehouse management software package or an order processing system. Some people may not have full-fledged WMSs. That's okay. We can accept the information from an order processing inventory system also. The user then hears the instructions, go to location 1, 2, 3, pick 5 cases, put it on pallet 2 or into tote 3, and responds verbally each step of the way. So, they're using either what we call check strings. You'll hear Joe talking about that in his discussion of how Pate Dawson uses the system, and responding with quantities and whatnot. Jennifer also can add additional information about the process. For instance, don't forget to break open this package. Things that can help in increasing the accuracy of the process, or helping a new user perhaps who doesn't know that when he picks a plastic disposable container, he has to remember to also pick the lid along with it. So the whole ambiance for the user is there's a dialogue. Jennifer is their friend. They're listening to instructions from her and talking to her, and she's helping them through the day. In fact, you'll even hear it gets to the point where people don't even talk about the system. They say, well, Jennifer told me to go here, and I told Jennifer what I did. So it's a really great environment in that way. All of this is utilizing the same infrastructure as a standard RF implementation, so you're using a Wi-Fi network, and again, communicating the software through standard open platforms. We see many different benefits depending on the type of operation, but some of the most common ones are productivity increases. Most of our customers will achieve productivity increases. In fact, all of them have. It varies depending on the type of operation. If your pick density is higher, you'll get more. We have travel time. Obviously, we can't take that out of the loop unless we look at perhaps doing some process optimization, which we'll talk about in a second. But you'll get some productivity increases. Again, it could be 10%, could be 40%. Again, you'll hear Joe talking about some extraordinary gains that were achieved at Pate Dawson, which, by the way, he's not the only one who has done that with Jennifer. We have a number of customers who report greater than 100% gains. We will see reduction of errors, especially if you're coming off a paper-based system. The interactive validation of each step of the way will enable you to make sure that errors are not occurring and thereby get you significant reduction. Some people ask me why eliminate every single error, but of course, you still have people, so Jennifer can still tell them to pick 5. They could say they picked 5. We do everything in our power to help that person to make his job easy and make it very difficult for him to make an error. But, people are still people. So one of the other things that we add in the process is an audit piece, which is often utilized by our customers and helps to, again, add accountability to the users themselves. Of course, a voice system will accelerate the training of new workers. It makes it much easier, and this we hear from all of our customers, to train new people. So depending on the kind of turnover issues you have, and most people who are in warehouses today have got turnover, some less than others. If you're running a night operation, you may have more, and depending on the locale. But to get a person up to speed, you get significant reduction in the time it takes you to train people because it's so much easier just to learn to listen and talk to Jennifer. There are, of course, as a byproduct of utilizing the system, additional management tools that ensue. You'll be able to see what people are doing. You'll be able to see where you are in the process from a workflow perspective. And, of course, you can report on that and, utilize other additional systems. Like some of our customers are utilizing labor management systems that derive information and feed from the data that we get from the picking process. So, the ROI you should be able to achieve in a fairly rapid form. Some are significantly less than 1 year. I think Pate Dawson was one of those. So again, we'll talk to that as we listen to their case study. Next. Okay, so this quadrant illustrates a little bit about some of the differences in how Lucas approaches a project, and I thought you'd be interested in learning a little bit about that because voice is now no longer the new, I don't know anything about technology. It's happening all over the place. It's one of the fastest growing, pieces of technology that's being implemented in the warehouse. Everybody's interested in it. Lots of people are throwing their hats in the ring. So what makes Lucas a little different than other folks who are delivering these type of applications? Well, as you'll hear from Joe, the Lucas objective is to collaborate with our customers to design process improvements which do some of the following. First, we provide improvements in the areas that are specifically important to each of our customers, such as productivity, accuracy, trackability, training. And we put emphasis on the areas that are most important to each of our customers. Two, we involve all levels of associates in the design of these improvements, especially the people who will be using the new tools, supervisors, pickers themselves. We find, and again, Joe will talk about the fact that it's much easier to put new technology, new solutions into play when the people feel they have an ownership in it, that they were a part of the design of it. Three, we want to use all available technologies which I'll say make sense. Just because we're delivering a voice-based solution doesn't mean that everything should be voiced. You want to have options. So, for instance, we suggest to our customers that we choose the hardware, the terminals that are going to be used, based on the desired process, not the other way around. Okay? You should, again, first design your process, then decide what the best technology pieces and terminals are. So you have choices in that. In our applications, we certainly urge people that where appropriate, use scanning. Things like lot numbers, serial numbers, catch weights, things that might be scannable. There's nothing wrong with scanning. All of our implementations, or most of them, have screens on the terminals. There's no reason why we shouldn't use displays for certain aspects. You'll see, in fact, that the users log in and enter a password through that. You can also utilize it to display aspects of product or information that may be not very voiceable. Like, for instance, one of our customers has got tremendous number of special instructions that are required for each of the pallets that they're building for delivery to retailers. Not easy to try to voice, many, many lines of information. So the screen becomes a very viable way of delivering that information to somebody. We'll use RFID when it's ready, of course. And external technologies like email or texting. We often find it very valuable when things occur to be able to send information to a supervisor via a text message or an email message. And Jennifer can support that. 4, we want to make the user experience great, so they will enjoy using Jennifer. That's extremely important. Not only do they help to design it, but the system, the deliverable, has to be something that they're going to really enjoy going to work every day and listening and talking to. Next slide, please. We want to go beyond the standard voice picking. There are lots of opportunities to derive additional ROI through what we call the hidden voice drivers. Things like, look at the entire operation process. For instance, food service picking also involves other things than besides the picking itself. It involves load planning, label printing, safety checks, such as the OSHA required inspections, auditing, truck loading, and, in fact, when you're truck loading, you have to do a HACCP-type trailer inspection. Well, those are all part of the process. Why not involve and include them in the solution that's delivered? And you get, when you do that, the ability to get better return on your investment with very little, if any, additional cost. Next slide. Now, in addition to all of the process improvement, we want to be able to capture and report on workflow, exceptions, and other meaningful information that's derived as a result of this in a simple but effective and highly available manner. So this, for instance, is an example of one of the screens on our Engage Management Services console that gives you the opportunity to monitor your workflow. And you can highlight various areas. It might be your warehouse area or your routes or your waves, if you have waves, and be able to then get additional derivative information about that. For instance, within a route, I'll give you a food service example. Maybe you want to see how are we doing on picking that route in freezer, cooler, and dry, because you want to coordinate the labor. So, again, being able to see that, very effective, very simple, graphical type things. And not only on, web-based, like the Engage screen that you see here, but on our mobile Engage. We can deliver a lot of the same type of data on smartphones or on PDAs. So, again, your supervisor doesn't have to be sitting in front of his screen all day. He can be out on the floor with his smartphone getting exception information through these types of deliverables. So, essentially, in summary, Lucas endeavors to deliver a highly flexible, configurable software solution running on non-proprietary hardware and software tools, which provides the most comprehensive and lowest total cost of ownership. So, there's a little bit about Lucas and about how we deliver our solutions. Right? And now, I think the next slide, we'll turn it over to Joe.
And hello, this is something that I'm extremely excited about. We've been working with Dan and John a considerable length of time, and I can tell you that everything Dan just said is right on. But getting started, Pate Dawson Company, as you can see, we are a regional supplier. We're servicing about an 11-state area, family-owned. The 5th generation just joined our team last year. Warehouse space, somewhere around 91,000 square feet here in Goldsboro. And most of our processes within the warehouse actually within all of operations includes some kind of technology that we have incorporated to improve accuracy, to improve efficiency, and in this case, we improve both. We are currently looking at adding Jennifer to our newest DC in Greensboro simply because of the process improvements and the productivity gains and the accuracy gains that we have seen in our Goldsboro location. Prior to voice, this slide kind of speaks for itself. We were slow, we were inaccurate, and we had a lot of challenges. But what you don't see here is all of the manual processes that we were constantly performing, like label assignment. That was a two-person job that lasted from when the shift began until the shift ended. And in label assignment, that included those two clerical people printing the labels. That included them separating the labels by area, assigning the labels to the selector, recording the in and out time, and there was a considerable amount of other data that these two people were responsible for recording on a daily basis. It also meant manual recording and inputting each individual catch weight and date if that was required on a product. And as managers and supervisors of the business, we never had a real picture of what our workflow looked like, because in some instances we were handing out an entire truckload of labels to one selector so that he didn't have to worry about coming back from the freezer. So we would give him a truckload and hope that he was back in an hour or hour and a half, and if he wasn't, we had to send someone looking for him. So when we started looking at which way we needed to go, some of our reasons for choosing voice, and these are in no particular order, but we knew we could be better, and we owed that to our customers. We had just started with a large piece of chain business, and in starting that and without having Jennifer, again, it was just a nightmare around here. A lot of the manual processes we knew could be completed or automated through using voice along with the management console. And then another reason was that we saw Jennifer as an addition to our management team because she was essentially going out and giving us the feedback. She was our eyes and ears and the real-time workflow tracker that our managers could use. So when we started to make this transition and we decided this is the way we're going to go with Lucas, the first step was in designing the system. And there we go. And Dan touched on it briefly, but the upfront planning is critical when you're looking at voice. I can tell you that I got off the phone yesterday with Dan asking him, could we add something to what we're currently doing? Because as we continue to see the benefits from Jennifer, she helps us identify areas of the process where we could change things to make ourselves more efficient. So if you're able to go into this and build your best practices up front, then you don't have to worry about changing your system down the road because it doesn't work the way you thought it was going to work. Now, on the planning team, we included managers, supervisors, order selectors, anyone we thought that would be involved in the process. They were in a roundtable discussion and helped us build the system. And the reason being is prior to Jennifer, we had implemented a piece of technology where all the know-it-alls or the executives and the managers, they got together and put together a piece of technology that we thought would work, and when we handed it to the employees, they let us know real quick that they could make it not work. So it's very important that you involve the people who are going to be using the system in the design because they're going to be able to tell you during the design process where the loopholes are, what needs to be fixed, what can be changed, what can be added, what can be taken away. And not only that, but they start to believe in the system prior to it ever being delivered. And so they're out there in their environment talking the system up prior to it ever being delivered, so their friends now are getting excited about a piece of technology, and they see the benefits. And when it's delivered, those people who are engaged in building the piece of technology, they were the guys that helped drive it to the rest of the team and let them know there was benefit so that it worked day one. Now, once we implemented Jennifer, she immediately began to change the face of our organization. We began getting better. We began getting more efficient. But this is where we really engaged the management console, and we sought out every tool that she had to offer. From this, we were able to identify areas where we could change and become more efficient. A couple of these, we were able to identify items that our selectors were using the command of skip slot. We were able to see those and ask the question of that selector, why are you skipping the slot? And he's able to inform us that, hey, you just don't have it slotted correctly. So at that point, we were able to identify slotting errors and correct those so that it made it a smoother pick path for the selector on most routes. We were also able to change our printer locations. Forever, we had printed labels from what we call a shipping office and handed them out through a window. Well, when we went to Jennifer, we simply moved the printer outside the windows so that the window didn't have to open and close as much. But we still saw selectors having to come from the freezer and having to come from the cooler in the dry warehouse, hop off of a pallet jack, walk up, walk back. Sometimes they decided they were going to get water or go to the bathroom. So what we did was we located the label printers adjacent to the areas where they were ending their assignments and wrapping their pallets. So they were getting off of their pallet jack one time, getting their next set of labels, and continuing on the pick path. The other thing was it helped us narrow our audits, because prior to Jennifer, we audited just basically walking out on the dock and looking for certain pallets. With Jennifer, we were able to engage the management console to give us the pallets that were selected by a new selector, the pallets that were for a certain customer, the pallets that had a certain dollar value, and it eliminated a lot of looking on the dock that wasn't necessary. Now, a lot of the functions that are on this slide you will see in the video clip, but two that I want to point out, check strings. Up there on the slide, it shows that, there's just a couple, but we actually have 7 ways that we give a check string. It's left, reverse, right, reverse, middle, odd, middle, reverse, and so on. And the check string validates that that selector is standing in front of that pick slot. We also ask him to give a level because we have multi-level pick. The reason we have 5-digit check strings here versus 3-digit was after we initiated the system at Pate Dawson, we found an order selector sitting in our break room who was calling out the check digits for his entire route. He had memorized the entire warehouse, basically. And he did this because they're paid on an incentive by piece. So therefore, the more work he could call out, it freed him up to be able to go out and pick it freehand like he had done before, but it also kept the other guys from getting those labels. So we went to a 5-digit check string to help us minimize the amount of memorization that we were having from the selectors. And the other piece is we have a countdown in Jennifer so that a new selector can basically respond to her when she says pick 5, he can grab 1 and she'll say pick 4. And she reminds him where he is in the process. If he's a seasoned selector and she says grab 5, he can respond back to her with grab 5. Or if it's grab 50 and he picks 50 and he knows he's got those, he can respond back with grab 50, and she'll continue on through the process. So here's a video clip of what Jennifer looks like at Pate Dawson.
Enter reading check string. 902.
Enter trailing check string.
265.
Do you want to enter base items?
No.
Aisle Bravo Alpha.
Ready.
1111 bottom.
722 bottom.
Grab 14 Bravo stop 3.
Grab 1 Bravo.
Grab 1 Bravo stop 3.
Grab 1 Bravo.
1511 bottom.
628 bottom.
Grab 1 Bravo stop 3.
Grab 1 Bravo.
2311 bottom.
799 bottom.
Grab 1 Bravo stop 3.
Grab 1 Bravo. 417 bottom.
417 wrong check string.
479 bottom.
Grab 1 Alpha stop 3.
Grab 1 Alpha.
Stage Bravo.
Stage Bravo 02.
Stage Bravo lane 02.
Yes.
Stage Alpha.
Stage Alpha 02.
Stage Alpha lane 02.
Yes.
Enter leading check string.
831.
Enter trailing check string.
461.
Do you want to enter base items?
No.
Aisle Bravo Alpha.
Jennifer, what is check screen pattern?
Odd.
143 bottom.
Grab 1 stop 6.
Grab 1.
Aisle Charlie Bravo.
Ready.
3011 bottom.
Skip slot.
Skip slot.
Yes.
Aisle Charlie Bravo.
Ready.
3612 bottom.
674 bottom.
Date.
113010.
Catch weight. Grab 1 stop 6.
386.0.
86.0 stop 6. Confirm last.
Ready.
Okay, so this is where I get extremely excited. Dan talked about, operators referring...
Before you go on, Joe, let me just make a couple of comments about the video, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Couple of things. You noticed in the video that there, again, are 5-digit check strings. They're set up in a way that allows you to either on an assignment basis or on a daily basis to switch them. And the selector, I don't know if you heard him ask, what is check digit scheme, is it? And she tells him it's the odd, which means first, third, and fifth digits, or left or right. And this way, again, as Joe mentioned, it alleviates the memorization and gives you a lot of control over that. And you don't have to go out and constantly change check digits like we used to do back when we only had the 3 digits. The second thing is that, again, you heard the dialogue between Jennifer and, I wanted to comment on the labels. There are a lot of guests with us today who are not in the food service business, and they may not realize why we apply labels to every case. Joe, maybe you can comment quickly on that for them.
Right, and just briefly, we also incorporated proof of delivery scanning. So we have a unique barcode that has to be applied to every case exiting the facility.
Right. So, and the other thing is that I think every food service distributor I've ever been in applies labels to the case, and they did it even before they had any RF or voice in there, because every pallet, almost every pallet, has got more than one order on it. So the drivers can identify which case belongs to what order by looking at the labels, and that alleviates a lot of the errors. Even on a manual system, it makes it a lot easier for the driver to do it correctly. So when we go to the voice or RF-based systems, that process continues. other industries that may have done label selection but don't have the same characteristics, like the grocery business, when they go to a voice solution, they eliminate the labels on the cases. But again, we could not do that in the food service business. So, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and I was just telling you, Dan mentioned about the relationship that our selectors have with Jennifer, and they actually, if they're English-speaking, they call her Jennifer. If they're Hispanic, they're Juanita. There's been many a time that with our results, I wanted to call her my girlfriend. But, here you can see, obviously, our errors were reduced, our pick rates were increased, but our error rate was what was most important to us because that is what impacted our customer. Right now, we average 1 in 15,000, and we actually just recently had a record week where we were 1 in 63,568 cases. And these are real numbers that we track on a weekly basis so that we can see trends. Now, Dan mentioned earlier that some of you may be asking, well, why isn't it 0? When we go back and research a lot of our mispicks, we find that it is an error of another party within the warehouse. A stocker put it in the wrong slot. Someone in returns didn't put it back where it was supposed to go. It was received incorrectly. There have actually been weeks where we had mispicks and we left them as mispicks, but we knew that they were an error of someone else. I think there's some weeks where we actually probably would have been at 0 mispicks. I also need to mention the reduction in head count. First and foremost, those 2 people that were handing out labels, their job function essentially went away. Now, they're still with the company, but we no longer needed someone to sit there and hand out labels on a day-to-day basis. And then last but not least, our selectors start pulling day 1. And that is, if they have prior pallet jack experience, then we can put them on a pallet jack. They're going to be slow because they have to learn the warehouse. But the thing is, they're not just following someone around as dead weight. They're actually pulling a piece of the case volume for that night. Now, as we kind of change gears and leave selection and start looking at loading, pre-Jennifer, I will tell you that, or before adding her to our load team, I was a little skeptical as to how she could really help us because we had seen her do a lot of things in the selection world, but I couldn't tie Jennifer to really helping us on the load team. But here's kind of the picture of what it looked like prior to us bringing in Jennifer. We gave the guys a piece of paper that had a route number on it. Each one of our pallets had 2 load stickers that represented the load and the pallet number. And our loaders would basically pull one of those black stickers off and put it on a piece of paper the way he said it was being loaded. I was somewhat blind to the fact that that wasn't a very good method. And the reason being was sometimes our selectors would pull all the stickers off and put them on the handle of their jack and then would apply them all whenever they got done. Sometimes the labels were missing, and what I found when we started doing some research was that we were often loading stuff on the wrong truck or leaving product off. Last thing was we have a very small dock here, and the loading inefficiency created chaos, and we had just become accustomed to living with it and didn't know that, Jennifer could kind of solve that for us. So transitioning into us actually loading with Jennifer, now we are able to ask Jennifer for where pallets are. And backing up to selection, when a selector finishes a pallet, she asks him for a staging lane, and that staging lane is basically an electronic map of our warehouse within the system to tell the loader when he asks where that pallet is, Jennifer can tell him what lane that pallet is in. Prior to Jennifer, these guys were just hunting up and down aisles looking for a pallet where a selector had dropped the product off. So now they're able to ask and actually get a definitive answer as to where that pallet is. They also use Jennifer to communicate where they are loading the pallets on the trailer. Before, it was, like I said, it was just a sticker, and if he stickered it like he was supposed to, then maybe it worked, but oftentimes that wasn't the case. And then they also have options such as combine and stuff. And what those two options do is when they have a pallet that they need to break at any point in the truck, if they're adding it to another pallet, she accepts those two commands as combine or stuff so that whenever the load map is printed out, it still shows where those pieces are on the truck.
A combine means that two pallets are going to be made onto one pallet. But stuff indicates that there's just no room for that piece of wood on the truck, but we got to get the products up there. So stuff says I'm taking the stuff off the pallet, and it's going to be in the truck.
Absolutely. And what that does is that gives us a more accurate picture as to how that truck is truly loaded. And lastly, they cannot complete a load until they have voiced all of their pallets. Now, moving into a couple screens that we use within the management console, the first one here you see is a load map. We actually give these to our drivers now because it gives information as to where each pallet is and how many pieces for each stop are on each one of those pallets. And Dan, did you want to introduce the loading video?
Oh, no, it's pretty self-explanatory. So, yeah, let's go into the video and show the loading process. Again, you'll hear the loaders are entering the pallet check string from the pallet label that's generated by Jennifer after they finish their assignment, and then they're indicating whether it's being loaded on the right or the left side. They validate that by entering in the door number, which has previously been associated with the trailer number, which is what they do when they start loading the truck. We enter a trailer number, we enter the trailer temperature, and a couple of other pieces about, is the trailer been broom clean, etc. So here you'll see them loading some pallets into the truck.
$6240 left.
6240 left.
04.
Pallet loaded. Give a pallet number and command.
$6227 right.
6227 right.
04.
Pallet loaded. Give a pallet number and command.
$6219 left.
6219 left.
04. Stuff 6243.
6243.
04. Stuff 6217.
6217.
04. Load complete.
Now, looking at loading results, as I mentioned, before, I was wondering how Jennifer could help us. Just briefly, Jennifer has reduced our loaded on truck and product not loaded to virtually nothing. She has also helped us keep up with our loaders on the dock and helped us keep our dock less chaotic. Now, moving into the management console, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, where managers now have a screen where they can see real-time workflow and what processes are being performed at any point in time, whether it be loading, selection, is the truck at the door and ready to go. All of this information is there at their fingertips in one location versus them having to walk across a dock. The next screen it's a screenshot of where we are able to see the current loads that are in the process. From here, we can prioritize the sequence of selection if a truck gets moved up from its normal departure time. We can see door assignments. We can also see the pallet counts for each trailer, which helps us in assigning trailers. In the next one, the assignment status basically just lets us know which selectors have which pallets, just in case we need to make changes or special assignments come in throughout the night that we need to give to that guy. Sales rep calls or customer service changes something and we need to change that pallet on the fly. The next one, the detail view by route, we're able to see a list of the status of completion for this route. So we know exactly where this route is in the process, if pallets are still being pulled, if they're being loaded, or if the truck is complete so that we can begin the paperwork piece as far as invoices and everything else that we require. In summary, we could not imagine Pate Dawson without Jennifer. She's positively impacted our customers through error rate as well as cost reduction. She's impacted our selectors' bonuses. Those guys can't imagine live without her. And then she's impacted our bottom line just, again, through the cost savings, the reductions in benefits, the reductions in time spent in selection. When we made the decision to use Jennifer, I didn't expect anything close to what she has done from us, but I can tell you that it comes from fully engaging the system. It's not just we put Jennifer out there and said go to work. You know, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that we do to make sure that she can get us there. And by identifying our best practices and building a solution to fit, we've seen, I can't even tell you how many more times it's paid back our investment. So, John, that's all I have. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe and Dan. That was a great presentation. And now we're going to go to the questions. Like I said, you can submit your questions online, and we will answer them. I'll read out the questions and pass them over to Joe and to Dan. We may not get to them all, but if we don't, we will follow up and get you an answer offline. The first question is rules of thumb about how large an operation can benefit from voice picking while providing an adequate ROI. Dan, do you want to address that? How large of an operation could benefit from voice?
Well, it's an interesting question. It obviously depends on, I'll call it your level of pain. I'll give you an example. We have done sites with as few as 6 or 7 pickers. But in that case, the labor rate was somewhat high, and there was a lot of overtime being spent. So you have to look at each individual one. I would say, if I was generalizing, I would say if you have probably more than at least 10 or 15 selectors in your operation, then there's a good chance that voice will be helpful to you. It also, again, it really depends. The value of your product, it depends on.
Okay. The next question, how well does the hardware work when picking in a freezer? And just so everyone knows, at Pate Dawson, they're using a Motorola MC9000, I believe, and they're using it in freezer, cooler, and dry areas. Dan and Joe, do you each want to give a response to this?
Yeah, and I'll, for us, the unit is housed in a insulated pack, and then the freezer headset, we do use a more rugged headset, but it's basically more for the guy. He can't wear his toboggan there, so it kind of insulates that area where his ear is, and it also helps him with better recognition and hearing what Jennifer's telling him. So the system works great no matter where we put it.
Hello?
Okay, I guess you're back, Dan.
It's going in and out.
Okay.
What's going on?
And I guess the next question I think is directed to you, Joe. What methodology did you use to develop your labor standards? And I'm not sure, maybe you could address that question.
And if they're asking as far as engineered labor standards, we do not have those in place. We've adjusted the bar, and we actually engage our selectors in setting that bar. So they help us tell where our cases per hour should be. And we have been, actually, most of our guys pull 70 to 80 cases north of our requirement right now, our highest tier. and they do so without ever thinking anything about it. They're ready to get in and get out, go home to their families. So I don't know, if you're asking about engineered labor standards, I think that's something that would have to be addressed at multiple times through the process as you saw the efficiency gains.
Right, and just along those same lines, in DCs that do have engineered labor standards and that have a formal labor management system, in those cases the Jennifer system can integrate with those labor management systems. So we can be providing the data that you can use in your labor management system. The next question regards voice recognition under different conditions. Are you satisfied with it? So again, Pate Dawson, as you saw in the videos, it is a somewhat standard warehouse, so it is fairly noisy. But Joe, do you want to address how well the voice recognition works in your environment?
Yeah, I can tell you that I'm sitting in an office that's right here within the warehouse right now, and it's extremely noisy here. I think the biggest key to that is the initial training that's done by the selector, and if he does the training as Jennifer directs and gets a model, it really doesn't matter what's going on around him. She throws all of that out, whether it's freezer, fresh, dry. These guys, especially the ones that have been here long enough to know the system, they have a tremendous advantage as far as their recognition.
Okay, and we have a very specific question about how long did it take Pate Dawson to go from 32 pickers over 2 shifts down to 12 pickers?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when we were at 32 selectors, we were about a $200 million company. We're somewhere around 255, 260 now, and we're doing it with less people. And we're constantly looking not to cut heads, but to reduce that head count. I still think today we've still got a little left in the tank, and we can still do that. It was something that came down over time. I would say that we were able to cut it in half within the first year. And then from there, as business grew and we got better, we were still shaving heads.
Okay. Let's see. Now, here's another question about the loading, and I'm not sure if you can give a detailed answer to this. How do you audit the stack and stuff functions? And I'm assuming that the question is, if you're taking things off a pallet, how can you be sure they are where they're supposed to be?
Right. All of our audit is done prior to the truck being loaded. So there really isn't an audit of the stuff and stack functions. But as a rule of thumb here, what we do is that those assignment or those commands are not used until the pallet's in the back of the truck, because we believe that he shouldn't be making that determination until he has that pallet and is looking at where he needs to put it. So when he's in the back of the truck, he's telling her, okay, it's not going to fit here, I need to put it there. So we're still 99% certain that it's on the truck.
Great. Okay, and I don't know how many more questions we're going to get to. There are several still showing up. Here's a question about your printers. You said during the presentation that you moved the printers, printing labels, into the warehouse. So are you experiencing more problems with printing labels since moving the thermal printers into the warehouse?
And that's interesting. Back by the freezer, that dock is a little colder, and what we saw, being that it is a thermal transfer print, the labels were not as dark, and so it actually hindered our drivers when it came to proof of delivery. And so we simply built a box where we installed a small heater, and that label printer works just like it did when it was in the office. So, no, we've not really seen any major problems. The one we saw in the freezer was very brief, and, we took care of that.
Okay. And I think this is going to be the last question we're going to be able to take, but again, there are some other questions out there, and we will get back to you with answers to all of them. But this last question is whether you had to invest in major upgrades in your IT hardware or software to install the Jennifer system.
And John, you know, I'm a warehouse operations guy.
Right.
So looking at the IT side, I'm not 100% certain how much we had to upgrade. I don't remember us doing anything to target that, you know, required any dollars. The biggest thing was we just had to have the units and the headsets.
Right. I think a lot of people, when they do implement voice, they do, if you're not already using RF throughout your warehouse, obviously you need the RF infrastructure. And in some cases you may need to, and as part of our process at Lucas, we would typically do kind of a survey of your warehouse to ensure that the RF coverage is adequate to support the system. But beyond that, you know, the basic infrastructure that you have in a standard warehouse is usually adequate for voice. Now, I think that's all the time we have for questions and answers. Again, like I said, a replay of the webcast will be available on the web on the Lucas Systems website. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email us at jennifer@lucasware.com or to call us at 724-940-7004. And again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. I look forward to seeing you on a future webcast. And thank you very much to Joe Perkins for that great presentation.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.